Okay, so Santio is an ethically based asset manager that is focused on delivering superior risk-adjusted returns for their clients, regardless of market conditions. For more info on their Sharia investment products, you can visit their website, which is santiocapital.com, and start saving towards your investment goals today. Santio Capital Management, invest for good. Santio Capital Management is an authorized financial services provider. Okay, we should be chatting now to Professor Jonathan Jansen. I just wanted to check the go rate if he's fine. So we spoke about with Lorenzo Davids earlier on about how to move from a position of no hope to positions of hope. Professor Jonathan Jansen's piece today talks about how good schools become dysfunctional, which may be another way of saying how to move from a position of hope to no hope. It's the complete reverse. So let's find out more about that with Professor Jonathan Jansen. On the line, he's the Distinguished Professor of Education at Stellenbosch University. Prof. Jansen, appreciate your time. Good morning.
Salam alaikum, my dear friend.
Walaikum salam. By the way, I was in Stellenbosch a month ago, and I chose not to say hello to you only because I was there for my son's wedding, which was meaning I was there for 10 hours and then off to Paul. So now you know. Next time, inshallah, as they would say,
Absolutely.
Right? Okay, good talking to you, but really not good to what we're talking about, right? So tell me about your piece. How good schools become dysfunctional. What's the setup around that?
Yeah, so I was after what happened at Jan de Klerk High School in Krugersdorp a few days ago, last week, I was really connecting the dots to our research that we do on dysfunctional schools and how some of these, in this case, former white schools, when they take in students from the townships, very often the schools don't know how to deal with what is a sudden explosion of disciplinary problems, because the children who are coming very often from the dysfunctional schools come with attitudes, with beliefs, with practices that are quite destructive, actually, in these more established schools. And as a result, two things happen: the schools don't know how to deal with these kids from township schools that are dysfunctional. And secondly, when they do deal with them, they tend to be overbearing. They tend to, to react physically, and then the charge of racism pursues and so on. Anyway, what then happens, we noticed, and I've been doing these studies now for years, is that there's a tipping point at which the white students, then the parents take them out. Now, very often in that first wave, it's simply racism. There's too many black kids. But then the white kids that remain, their parents also take them out in the second wave. And that's because they can't deal with the constant disruption and dysfunction that happens as the school integrates. And so my argument is that most black kids who go into former white schools actually do quite well, actually are quite stable. Their parents, hold them accountable, and they make a positive contribution to the schools. But from our studies, very often, right here in Cape Town where I live, Sansusi High School is a very good example. The school just went into one disciplinary crisis after the next. As a result, all the white kids are gone. Same happened at the school I studied early on, called J.G. Stradon, now called Diversity High. They did all the right things, but the disciplinary problems became too much, and as a result, all the white kids left for US school, Alberton. I don't care if a school goes from all white to all black, between you and me. What I do care about in the bigger scheme of our country is where are the spaces going to be where white and black kids, given our history, can learn together and live together, and if necessary, love together, so that by the time they get into the big wide world, they're the kinds of citizens who have practiced already what my friend John Samuel calls the habits of democracy.
Well, so are you therefore suggesting that, just to pick up on the issue of spaces, that effectively South African school learners are increasingly moving into to use a phrase often used in the past, into their lagers, and therefore there's less integration now than before?
Yeah, we actually have a very good case study to compare ourselves with, and that's the United States. When Brown versus Board of Education in 1954, believe it or not, their Supreme Court said that separate cannot be equal, right? And so that led to the desegregation of schools through busing mainly, through much of the United States. If you went back there today, okay, the schools are more resegregated, okay, more segregated than they actually were in the 1950s and 60s. And so in South Africa, where the demographics are obviously different, we have 90+% Black population. I fear that what you're going to see is more and more of our schools becoming resegregated. There'll always be majority Black schools, but the schools in which there was hope, in which you could get students together, a lot of those schools, I fear, will become, over time, particularly the ones with lower fee structures. You see the elite schools like your Westerfords and your Saxes and your St. John's, and they will always have enough of a barrier to massification, because of the fees being 200,000, 300,000, and so on. So I'm not worried about those schools. I'm worried about the schools in the middle, your Pinelands North Primary, your, schools like that, where you have an opportunity, a unique opportunity, to create spaces in which Black and white children learn together. And by the way, in which Black and white teachers teach together, and in which the senior management team of principals and deputies and what have you are people from across the spectrum in terms of race, ethnicity, religion, culture, all of that stuff. And unless we've given up on the nation building project, which would be a disaster, this has to be on the public agenda.
So therefore, going back to that Krugersdorp High School issue, I mean, the actual scene playing out there was horrific. I mean, what did you make of what happened? I mean, what did you see? I mean, besides the students heckling and doing whatever, one guy jumping onto a teacher's back, what's your understanding of all of that?
Yeah, so whether we like it or not, Ashraf, don't forget, schools are only one kind of institution that molds young people in our country. The founding institution for molding values is your home, And I've often said, you might even have heard this, I said, we should abandon life orientation in schools. Because my definition of life orientation is, it is the club your mother should have given you on the way to school, not a subject that you force down kids' throat in the school, So if you didn't come from a home, I mean, I can't imagine, and I mean, we are parents, like all parents, we work hard to give our kids values and what have you. But I can't imagine that a kid would perform like that, a kid that jumps on an elderly teacher's back. Let me just be clear to him, he's not my problem. My problem is, where are the bloody parents? Okay? Because if you taught your kids to respect people, to respect education, to respect your elders and so on, I don't care whether they're white or Black, right? Then a kid doesn't jump on somebody's back, And so we put too much pressure on the schools. The schools didn't do this, the schools didn't do that, the schools didn't do that. Where are the parents? In this holy month of Ramadan, where are the religious institutions? Where are the sports clubs and stuff? Where you don't just go to do sports, you go to learn how to compete. You go to learn how to lose. You go to, I'm a Blue Bulls fan, deep in my blood is blue. And there's this beautiful story in Victor Matfield's biography, in which he sort of says, they lost a match when he was a schoolboy. And he just walked off the field. He didn't go and greet congratulate the winning team. He says by the time he got home, his mother beat the hell out of him. When you lose, you shake the guy's hand. That's what I mean, man. That you can't expect the school to make up, for failures in other institutions.
Yeah, I think that's an important point because there is a sense that for many people, the school is the be all, that they have to do everything. And you made the point about religious institutions, and yes, it's Ramadan, but also probably 80% of South Africans, follow the Christian faith, right? So, besides the mosques and the other schools, in terms of the churches, because I mean they would have the highest and the biggest and the broadest reach, right? That does suggest a massive failing in society, isn't it?
No, no, absolutely. Look, I went to church from the day I opened my eyes, and the things that you learn in a church or in a mosque or a synagogue, wherever, a temple, are the kinds of things like restraint, you know, the respect for a higher authority, the appreciation of the written word. Those are I'm listening while we had these technical glitches. I'm listening to what is clearly, Islamic songs and so on and so forth. Now, I can't relate to it, obviously, because it's not part of my, you know, thinking and my emotions. But you know what I could relate to is the attempt to lift you higher, is the attempt to say there's a standard here by which I should live. That's what the church should do. When the churches don't do that, when they become as a prosperity gospel kind of outlets where making money from your parishioners is more important than making, citizens, then of course you have the kind of problems that. So all our institutions, including government, by the way, have failed us very badly, in complementing what the schools can and should be doing as well.
And therefore, just the last thing, I think it was former President Thabo Mbeki who made the point about, two South Africas. He's not the only person who may have said that, right? Do you therefore see in our inability to manage the issues of discipline in the schools, and the dysfunction that come at community level, you will increasingly find the two South Africas perpetuated in our education system, and therefore moving beyond that?
It's a good question, but I think the president is absolutely bloody wrong. He sees the world through these unresolved bitternesses that I think carries with him. And so I'm not fooled by that. No, this is not about two. This is not about two countries or two communities. This is about one country that's screwing up. Let me give you a very good example. Do you know what happened in Krugersdorp besides this event?
You tell us. Yeah.
You remember that the Krugersdorp, the devil story,
Yes,
where you
yes.
had, there's a I don't know if it's Showmax or something.
It was covered on Netflix or something, or Showmax. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. There's a show about white people literally killing off insurance agents, in order to make insurance money and so on and so forth. Right there in the same place. This is the same community. This is our people. They're not white people. They're our people, right? So the breakdown in culture, the breakdown in terms of, law and order, the breakdown in terms of respect for humanity, dignity of others, is something that is not two countries, it's one country that is falling apart. And by the way to resolve this is in the leadership of these institutions. When I listen to you, Ashraf, and I listen to my childhood friend Lorenzo, I get hope, not because you have a show, not because he jumps on trains, but because you lead. You lead in a way that thousands, if not millions, of other South Africans say, "It will soos Ashraf is." I want to be like Lorenzo, and that is how you solve this problem. Leadership. But there's a beautiful expression in my second language that I learned in the Free State in Afrikaans, that says, "A vis vrot van die kop af, fish rots from the head down." We can solve this problem with ethical leadership.
Well, there you are, and as you know, and to borrow a soccer example, because you're a fan of Tottenham Hotspur, with my club Manchester United, it all went wrong when the leader had disappeared. So there's a link between that and maybe the South Africa and the leadership we've had in the last 10, 15 years.
Listen, Ashraf, I should just tell you, all is not lost at Man United. My friend Imtiaz Suleiman has offered to help you guys.
I'm aware of that. We'll consider it. Let's leave it at that, Professor Jonathan Jansen. In fact, much appreciate your time. Now, in terms of that video, by the way, feel free to tweet about it and maybe tweet the links to your piece as well. I'll gladly share that too. In terms of the video, if those of you have not watched it, I'll be surprised if you haven't. Well, yeah, it is.
Greetings, fellow viewers, and welcome to Submersive Alerts, where alerts
Okay, more to come on a range of other issues, including chatting to Ashraf Gangarkar, who's pretty fired up as always, and we will focus on the Vereniging School, and we will chat to Professor Habib Nurba as part of the feature of How Do You Champion South Africa.